When people hear the title No Country for Old Men, they often assume it's just a catchy phrase, but it actually holds the key to understanding the movie's deeper meaning. The film explores the changing world and the erosion of traditional values, primarily through the eyes of Sheriff Anton Bell, played brilliantly by Tommy Lee Jones. Bell represents a dying breed of lawmen who adhere to a moral code fading away in the face of ruthless violence and chaos. Throughout the movie, we see him grappling with feelings of helplessness and despair as he struggles to reconcile the world he once knew with the harsh reality of drug trade and the senseless brutality it brings. So, when you consider the title No Country for Old Men, it's not just about the physical danger that surrounds the characters. It's also a statement about the fading of a certain way of life, the disappearance of a world where old-fashioned values and morality held a stronger foothold. The film forces us to confront the fact that sometimes there is no going back to the way things were, and we must adapt or be left behind. The story takes place in the desolate landscape of West Texas in the early 80s. The film's narrative centers on Llewellyn Moss, a Vietnam veteran who stumbles upon the aftermath of a drug deal gone wrong while hunting antelope in the desert. Moss discovers several dead bodies, abandoned vehicles, and a truckload of drugs scattered across the desert. As he investigates the site, he comes across a mortally wounded man begging for water. Moss, however, remains cautious and detached, choosing not to help him. Continuing his exploration, Moss uncovers a satchel containing $2 million in cash. Despite understanding the inherent danger tied to the money, Moss decides to take it, setting off a chain of events that will forever change his life. Realizing the potential consequences of his actions, Moss returns to the scene later that night to bring water to the dying man. However, he finds the man dead and notices that others have also discovered the site. As he tries to leave, Moss is spotted by members of a drug cartel who chase him through the desert. With only his wits and resourcefulness, Moss manages to outmaneuver the cartel members for a while, but he eventually finds himself cornered near the banks of the Rio Grande River. Desperate to escape, he dives into the river, narrowly avoiding a hail of bullets. But Moss's troubles are far from over. As he swims to safety, he notices a vicious dog set loose by the cartel rapidly swimming towards him. Engaged in a desperate race for his life, Moss reaches the shore just in time, grabbing his trusty pistol from his soaked clothes. With the dog lunging towards him, teeth bared, Moss fires a single shot that kills the dog and marks the end of this harrowing chase. This gripping sequence showcases Moss's resourcefulness and survival instincts. He adapted on the fly and single-handedly outplayed a professional gang. Now that we're familiar with two main characters, let's meet the third, Anton Chigurh. His introduction occurs early in the film, when he is arrested by a young police officer and taken to the station. Chigurh sits handcuffed in the office, his face expressionless and devoid of emotion. The scene underscores the air of menace and unpredictability that surrounds him. As the officer talks on the phone, Chigurh silently slips from his handcuffs and waits for the call to end. Immediately, Chigurh attacks him with the handcuffs, using them as a makeshift garrote to strangle the officer to death. The brutal and efficient nature of the murder immediately establishes Chigurh as a cold-blooded and remorseless killer. But I argue he is something more than that. I say he is an agent of fate, like a supernatural being from a legend or a fairy tale, a living embodiment of a curse following the cup of gold or a case full of cash in this story. Everyone who gets in his way must be eliminated. Those who are just around him are tested. The coin brings the verdict. In the next scene, we see Chigurh stopping the driver in his way and taking his life with a captive bolt pistol, a tool typically used for stunning cattle before slaughter. The scene begins with Chigurh driving down a desolate Texas highway. He spots a car in front of him and decides to pull it over. The unsuspecting driver, a middle-aged man, stops his car, believing he has been pulled over by a police officer or someone in authority. As Chigurh approaches the driver's side of the vehicle, he calmly asks the man to step out of the car. The confused driver complies, still unaware of the danger he is in. Chigurh examines the man with an unsettling, emotionless gaze before instructing him to hold still. With no warning or explanation, Chigurh places the captive bolt pistol against the driver's forehead and pulls the trigger. The powerful bolt pierces the man's skull, killing him instantly. Chigurh's face remains stoic and detached, as if the cold-blooded murder he just committed is nothing more than a mundane task. Chigurh then steals the driver's car, leaving the lifeless body on the side of the road as he drives away. And with that, our scene is set. The three characters work in unison to invoke feelings that mental health patients struggle with. Sheriff Tom makes us long for better, long-past days. Moss represents everyday struggle, constantly trying to stay afloat. And Chigurh brings the feeling of inevitable doom. In one of Hollywood's most famous scenes, Chigurh enters the gas station. The owner starts a casual conversation asking about Chigurh's day and whereabouts. With his cold and menacing demeanor, Chigurh responds with cryptic and unsettling answers, making the owner increasingly uncomfortable. Let's try to interpret this scene using my hypothesis that Anton is the bringer of destiny. The shop owner asks Anton about where he came from, and to question fate is blasphemous. Anton examines proprietor's life choices, and when he learns the man married into a business, he is sure this man is not someone who should question destiny. He puts him to the test. He needs to call the coin that came the same way Anton did. The proprietor hesitantly calls heads, and Chigurh reveals he has won the toss. However, he doesn't divulge what was at stake, leaving the proprietor puzzled and relieved. Chigurh tells the man to keep the coin and not mix it with his other change, as it is now his lucky coin. Moss takes care of his wounds and sends his wife to her mother in Odessa, as their home is no longer safe. Meanwhile, a businessman tries to hire Chigurh to recover the money for him. He doesn't know Anton is just using their meeting to obtain more information and eliminate competition. Chigurh obtains a transponder to track the money, as it has a hidden tracking device inside. I want to touch upon the scene in which this lady sticks to the codex and gives out no information.
Where does it work?
Did you not hear me? We can't give out no information.
There is a heated debate on whether Anton didn't kill her because he respected her or because he heard the toilet flush and knew she wasn't alone. I believe I can prove both of these interpretations are wrong. See, if we skip a bit to to the scene right before Anton kills Carson Wells, Anton says,
"If the rule you followed brought you to this, of what use was the rule?"
Based on that quote alone, I believe we can safely say it wasn't this lady's codex that saved her. Throughout the movie, we see Anton eliminate multiple gangsters on more than one occasion. So I don't think another normie in the toilet is what deterred him either. So I offer a third interpretation. As I stated already, Anton is an agent of destiny, the bringer of justice. He is an embodiment of a curse following the gold, or in this case, a bag full of money. He eliminates everyone who opposes him. The fates of those who just happen to be in his way are left to chance. He often lets the coin decide, but in this case, the toilet flush interrupted him. Anton interprets the interruption as a sign he mustn't touch her. We'll see another example of this by the end of the movie. At the same time, Sheriff investigates the drug deal crime scene and begins to piece the story together. He realizes that a person hunting Moss is unlike anything he's ever seen. He can't fathom that a perpetrator would so gallantly enter one's home and drink their milk from the fridge. He can't understand why there aren't any exit wounds or bullets inside Anton's victims. Anton is utterly alien to the world Sheriff is used to, a sign of an end of an era. Moss checks into a motel and monitors his injuries. He uses his military experience to assess the terrain, or in this case, motel. Moss hides the satchel of money in the air vent, but he also ensures it can be reached from another room. He diligently monitors the motel activity from the outside, and later in the night figures his initial room might be compromised. He returns tomorrow morning and rents another room from which the money case is reachable through the air vent. Unbeknownst to Moss, the Mexican cartel that's hunting him are being hunted themselves. As Moss recovers the case through the vent, Chigurh eliminates the Mexicans mere 30 feet away. The word of Chigurh eliminating those henchmen reaches their boss. He realizes that sending guys for the money alone isn't enough. He needs to send someone special to take care of Chigurh as well. Enter Carson Wells, a former Special Forces operative turned hitman. So Moss is being hunted by the cartel, both cartel and Moss are being hunted by Chigurh, and Chigurh is being hunted by Carson Wells. Moss decides to move to another motel to avoid being tracked. He manages to transfer the money to the new location without being detected. However, Chigurh eventually discovers Moss's whereabouts and arrives at the Eagle Pass motel. At the same time, Moss finds the tracking device hidden in the case. He notices the tracking device's signal growing stronger and prepares for confrontation. Chigurh, suspecting that Moss is in one of the rooms, cautiously makes his way through the motel. Moss, who has turned off the lights in his room, listens intently for any signs of Chigurh's presence. The tension builds as both men wait in the darkness, anticipating the other's move. Finally, Chigurh shoots the lock, and Moss takes his chance, firing his shotgun through the door and narrowly missing Chigurh. Caught off guard, Chigurh returns fire, but Moss manages to escape through the window. Despite a small injury, Chigurh remains determined and continues pursuing Moss through the small town's dark streets. The chase turns into a thrilling shootout, with both men exchanging gunfire and both men getting seriously injured. In the aftermath of the shootout, Moss crosses the border, where he gets picked up by a group of Mexican musicians who take him to a hospital. Chigurh is forced to steal the necessary drugs and perform makeshift first aid on himself, showcasing his resourcefulness and determination to continue his pursuit of Moss and money. While Moss is in the hospital, he receives an unexpected visit from Carson Wells. Carson reveals that he knows about the money Moss found at the drug deal gone wrong and informs him that Chigurh is still on his trail. He offers Moss a deal. If Moss hands over the money, Carson will not only let him live, but also help protect him from Chigurh. We now know that Carson intends to double-cross the cartel, so it's entirely possible he wants to finesse Moss as well. Moss, however, remains defiant, refusing to trust Wells or give up the money. He learns that Carson knows Carla Jean is in Odessa. After Carson's visit, Moss decides to make a plan to protect himself and his wife. He arranges for Carla and her mother to go to El Paso and asks her not to tell anyone where she is going. Moss is determined to keep the money and stay ahead of Anton and the Mexicans. Unbeknownst to him, Chigurh outplays Carson Wells. During a phone call, Chigurh tells Moss he knows damn well where Carla Jean is. Chigurh offers to leave her be if Moss gives him the money. That strengthens the argument Chigurh sees himself as an agent of fate. Chigurh doesn't know where the money is exactly and has yet to start his journey towards Carla. If the money is brought to him before he goes toward Carla, that means she didn't stand in his way and won't suffer the consequences. Since Llewellyn refuses, Chigurh is forced to go after her. And from that point on, no matter what happens to the money, Carla did get into Chigurh's way and must suffer consequences. Anton would eliminate the cartel boss as efficiently as he did others. This is when the most ambiguous scene in the entire movie happens. After a brief and semantically correct dialogue, the scene cuts off before we get to learn the fate of the accountant. The exact quotes are,
Are you going to shoot me?
and
That depends. Do you see me?
some say the accountant could save his life by simply saying no and pretending he wasn't a witness. They say that accountant's grammatical correctness impressed Anton. I find that naive. The accountant could use that same mental precision to describe Anton's looks to police and other mobsters. Throughout the movie, Anton meticulously removes all his tracks, so to leave a live witness sounds entirely out of character. Nevertheless, the Coen brothers said they wanted this scene to remain ambiguous. The next scene would be unambiguous though. A well-meaning farmer stops to give a stranger a helping hand. In their conversation, he makes a crucial mistake. He asks where Anton is going. In Anton's mind, that justifies killing the farmer. Moss heads toward the border to rendezvous with Carla Jean. As he arrives at a motel near the border, Chigurh is not far behind. Unbeknownst to Moss, a separate group of Mexican drug cartel members have obtained his whereabouts from his mother-in-law. They still want retribution for the stolen money and the chaos caused by the failed drug deal. This group reaches Moss first, leading to a violent encounter in which Moss is killed before Chigurh even arrives. Sometime later, Chigurh murdered Carla Jean as well. As he leaves the crime scene, we get our final clue that Anton isn't human, but is in fact an agent of destiny. He is keeping a keen eye on two boys in his rearview mirror. it is obvious that, for whatever reason, he's trying to evaluate if he should eliminate them too. He stopped in his tracks when another car slams into him. The heavens have spoken, and he is not to hurt the boys. He walks off into the sunset. No Country for Old Men is a masterclass in storytelling and the exploration of profound themes. The Coen brothers expertly weave a complex narrative that delves into the darker aspects of human nature and the underlying forces that drive people to make life-altering decisions. It offers a brutal take on the role that fate and chance might play in our lives. From the seemingly random discovery of the drug money by Lavelle and Moss to the chilling coin tosses employed by Anton, the film emphasizes the idea that the course of our lives is often dictated by forces beyond our control. And if there is one thing under your control, don't stop for strangers. Each time you do, it's a coin toss.